Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's at 11 o'clock, and we appreciate you joining us for the Infinite Managed Cloud Services presentation. We're going to wait just another minute or two and allow other people to come in, and then we'll be right back with you. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome, everybody. We thank you so much for your time today and for joining us. We'd like to welcome you to the Infinite Managed Cloud Services presentation, Risk-Free Migration Plan to the Cloud, powered by Zadara. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with you and hope that you'll get great value out of this presentation. First, I'd like to review the agenda of what we're going to do today is that we're going to do an introduction and talk about Infinite and Zadara, and then we're going to cover some different definitions, and then we're going to talk about what the heck is going on, what's going on in the marketplace today, and what are we hearing, and what type of opportunities are we trying to put together. Also, we'd like to introduce the Infinite Managed Cloud Services made up of both Z Compute and Z Storage, as well as some use cases and a summary. My name is Derek Danskin. I'm the Partner Marketing Manager for Zadara, and I work closely with Infinite. And I'd also like to introduce and have Dean Manderson introduce himself.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, on this fine Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. Again, I'm the Senior Director of Channels and Strategic Partners. I work closely with the Zadara team on a really a day-to-day basis. So let me tell you a little bit about Infinite. Infinite, we've been around for around 30 years. We're based in San Diego with a presence also in Phoenix and in Los Angeles. We provide colo, network, cloud, and managed services to our customers. Roughly about 3-4 years ago, we were predominantly 90%, I would say, was data center and co-location and networking. And we've worked really now over the course of the last 3 years to kind of a 60-40 split, with 60% being colo, 40% being on the services side. What we like to do is we like to strive to build intelligent outcomes for our clients. We do this really by listening, assessing, and partnering with our customers to deliver on technology roadmaps that are ideal for their workloads today and tomorrow. We can optimize cloud infrastructure in any workload, for any workload in any business, right? So if you look at the slide that's up there today, these are really the areas that we focus: network, data center. As I mentioned, 2 locations here in San Diego. We've got 1 in Phoenix and 1 up in Los Angeles. And then from a cloud services standpoint, we can manage really your full stack, right? With our Infinite Community Cloud, whether it's Hyper-V, VMware, private, public, hybrid, whatever it may happen to be from a cloud standpoint, as well as our managed services, such as managed security, backup and recovery, business continuity, and networking. Next slide, Derek. Great. All right, so the Infinite methodology is pretty simple. You know, we work with customers to support their growing needs, whether it's on-prem, data center, community cloud, or public cloud. We're platform agnostic. We provide 24/7, 365 support. As I mentioned, we can manage your entire stack. But the key here really is around our people. Our people are really our bread and butter, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Dean. It's a privilege to work with Infinite. I'd like to talk a little bit about Zadara here is that the Zadara has been in business for over 10 years. We've got 300 plus clouds and 280 plus petabytes deployed with 250 partners such as Infinite. You can see that we've got a number of different locations here all over the world, and that gives us the capability to be closer to the edge and where your data is at. And Infinite has access to those as well. So if you take a look at this slide, all of the yellow dots are where there's Zadara implementations, installations, and then the orange dots are where AWS is. So a lot of people are using AWS, but what we really want to be able to focus on is to say, how do we get the data out closer to the edge and help with the migration to the cloud? One of the things that's really cool about Zadara is that we sponsor the Alfa Romeo Racing Orlean Formula One team. And if you notice there on the car, it's got the Zadara logo, and we're the official cloud supplier for Alfa Romeo Orlean F1 team. And what that means is that in this situation is that unlike NASCAR, which I'm more familiar with, but with Formula One, they have a number of different data points and data sensors all over this car that they're picking up data on a regular basis. So if you've ever watched a Formula One race and they show the pits, you can see that there's people there that are looking at screens and they're going over and analyzing all of that data. When they also capture all of that data, put it in the cloud, and then review it as they're going forward. With Zadara, that means all that data is out there. And what this is that this is in the cloud and available for them. That they usually race about every 2 weeks through their season and go from, for instance, we recently watched the British Grand Prix and sponsored that in the UK. And then also they had the Hungary Grand Prix, and wherever they go all over the world, then they're analyzing that data and taking a look at the car, both while it's live and after the fact, to be able to make sure to make the car better and be able to better compete in that environment. When we talk about taking data to the edge, this is literally right at the edge of where we're picking up all of the information off of the car, off of all of the sensors, and then being able to get that back over so that they can analyze that, make adjustments during the race, and move along those lines. What they're planning on doing in the next year is to actually take Zadara environment and putting those in the haulers that they're using that they transport around the world, so that they'll actually be not necessarily just from a cloud perspective, but it'll be all over, it'll be right there on the track and capturing that data. When we talk about risk-free migration plan to the cloud, let's talk about that. First of all, I wanted to put together a couple of definitions. One of them is what is cloud? And when we're going to, for the purpose of this is that there's a lot of times that people talk about cloud and they mean different things. But for the purpose of this presentation, we'll lay a little bit of a foundation that cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage and computing power, without direct active management by the user. And when we talk about out at the edge, we're going to define edge as a distributed computing paradigm that includes deployment of infrastructure and applications outside of the centralized data center as close as is necessary to where the data is generated and consumed. So that's helping to reduce the latency, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about what we're hearing in the marketplace today. In some of the challenges in the enterprise. Some of the different use cases that we see here is that we're seeing some of the clients are looking at and they want to repatriate. Maybe they've gone to AWS or Azure and they found that they're locked in and they want to be able to move their data between clouds and be able to have that flexibility to get it out closer to the edge and also not be necessarily locked in with one vendor. Also, they look at going from a CapEx to an OpEx at the edge environment. How do I pay for what I'm using rather than doing a capital expenditure and being able to have to buy for what I'm anticipating could be the case for the next 5 years, and then allow me to be able to work in that type of an environment so that I can go to an OpEx model and only pay for what I need. Edge and latency, as we talked about with the Formula One cloud, how do we get that data out closer to the cloud or to the edge and be able to put together and work from that perspective to be able to bring that data closer to the cloud or closer to the edge, and where the data is being consumed and also where it's being generated. I want to talk about utilizing local partnerships such as NFINIT. This gives you a capability of let's call someone that knows our environment rather than I have to go out and do an 800 number and press a number of numbers to get to someone that doesn't know my environment. How do I go and I partner with someone so I'm shoulder to shoulder as I'm going through a different environment along those lines to make sure that we're going to be able to have someone that addresses what we've got and knows what's going on in our environment. And then also technology refresh. How do I keep IT fresh and as the technology is moving, that way I don't have to do that and I can accomplish that on the fly. The objectives that we're really looking at here is that we want to be able to address any time zone, any storage type, any application, any location, even yours, which we'll talk about if we want to put it on site in your data center and have it be an OpEx model and have it be an OpEx model, 100% consumption based. So NFINIT enterprise grade managed cloud services are compute, power, data storage, backup, and disaster recovery, low latency edge services in a robust enterprise grade features, all available on demand. I want to thank all of you for being here today and being a part of this. I want to just introduce you as we've got some other things coming up at the end, so stay with us through this presentation and we'll give you an idea of some of the technology that's available to you if you partner with Zadara or partner with NFINIT powered by Zadara.
Hey, Doug, real quick.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. What we'll do is at the end of the presentation, we will respond to those questions via email with one of our subject matter experts.
Excellent. Thanks, Dean. Appreciate you putting that in there. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. Is that Zadara was a situation where we created a business model before any code was actually produced. We wanted to create that and understand how we were what we want to accomplish before we actually put together a product and started doing along those lines. First and foremost is that we needed to have enterprise grade performance and security. Virtual CPUs and memory, EC2 compatibility, solid state drives, hard drives, in-flight and at-rest encryption, snapshots mirroring, high availability. These are all just table stakes to even be able to get into the game. Then what we want to do is, this is where our technology is really focused on, is how do we make this elastic? How do we make it on-prem, co-location, or in the cloud, allow you to scale up or to scale down, pay as you go, and make sure that hardware upgrades are included. It's a 100% OpEx model. In this type of an environment, I sort of use an example as I live in Southern California and I have some different things on my property. I've got trees and different things that need to have water. I take a look at that from an OpEx perspective in regards to my water supply. In the event that it's raining and in the winter time, I can turn off all of my sprinklers because I've got rain coming in. In the event that it's going to be 95 or 97, like it is going to be here in the next few days, that means that I need to make sure that I've got water and probably add more water onto for my irrigation purposes. My water company is supplying a utility-based model to me that I can either use as much water as I need or as little water as I need, and it's 100% just based on the amount that I actually use. What we're doing is I'm bringing up that analogy to be able to bring it to this environment, that when we wanted to make sure that we were fully elastic, we wanted to make sure that you had a utility-based model that would allow you to use whatever you need in either CPUs or storage or as little as you need when you need it. And then on top of that is that we have expert management that's 24/7 by 365, and we want to make sure that it's fully managed. We're being proactive in the support. It's our technology. We're watching this and making sure that we're addressing seamless migrations, upgrades, and then having technical resources that know your environment in partnership with NFINIT and their resources to be able to address if there's any challenges that go along those lines. These are some of the different Zadara customers that are out here, and we'll talk about a couple of them. One of them, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, is Omnitrax. Omnitrax is basically tracking 18-wheelers going down the road. When they're stopped, when they're moving, when they're going to arrive, when they're going through way stations. This is all being powered by the Zadara cloud. This is a type of an environment where they're making sure that as those 18-wheelers are going down the road, that they're getting where they need to be, when they need to be, and of course there's very strict restrictions that are in place in regards to how long that they can drive and that the driver doesn't drive too long for safety purposes and those kinds of things. All of that is captured by Omnitrax as they're going down the road and is put into a Zadara cloud. So let's talk about the Infinite Cloud Managed Services, the solution. What are we going to bring to the table here? It's made up of, if you take a look over here to the left, it's made up of Z Compute, Z Networking, and Z Storage. Z Compute, these are all going to be elastic consumption based, 100% OpEx. And then with Z Compute, it's EC2 compatible. So in the event that you've used and you've put resources and done coding out there on AWS and you want to have other options available for you for your compute services, we've got that compatibility that's built into Z Compute. It's going to be elastic. It's going to have virtual private VPC environment, as well as load balancing. We'll go into this in more detail here in a couple of slides. Z Storage Services, when we put this together, is that we wanted to be able to address block, file, and object, all from one environment. Let's talk about Z Compute. Again, elastic compute, which scales as your business demands, as we've talked about. And this can be located in an infinite co-location in a client data center, such as yours, or in a public cloud. And what we want to be able to do is to be able to provide you with compute resources that are flexible and reasonable in price for you to be able to grow into and or reduce if you need to, whatever the case would be, and available to you on demand when you need it. This gives you an example that just with a couple of different clicks, we can go over here and access Z Compute and set up a cloud resource or a cloud service to go along those lines based on your needs and be able to provide that up so that you can bring those up right in a matter of moments. In this type of an environment, as I mentioned this before, but this gives you a little bit further view in regards to this, is that you can see that you can have this at your location if you choose to. In a Z Compute environment, it can be on-prem, but you're still only paying on an OpEx model. You can have this at an infinite co-location or over here at like an Equinix or a Cyxtera or whatever the case would be. We can put this wherever you need it and whatever makes sense for your customer and for your application and for your business across 300 global locations, wherever you need these to be, as it was referenced in the previous map. Let's talk a little bit about Z Storage. Z Storage is a virtual private storage array is what we're bringing to the table here. And what we wanted to do is that we wanted to be able to configure it and reconfigure it on the fly for any workload. So we needed to be able to make sure that, first of all, we were addressing all the media types, such as hard drive, hybrid, or solid state drives. And then also is that we would be able to address block, file, and or object all within one virtual private storage array. And this can be available in your colos, data centers, or in the cloud, as we've discussed with Z Storage or Z Compute previously. This gives us the capability to now go out and create a storage array or an object storage. Again, similar type interface with just a few clicks on a screen to be able to make this happen and to be able to bring up and to bring storage to the table. So let's talk about, this is really the nuts and bolts and behind it. Those were all conceptual slides. This would be more tactical. So if we take a look at this, is that in this environment is that what we're bringing is multi-tenant architecture and a single tenant experience. And what that means is that it gives you the capability to make sure that even though you're paying in a multi-tenant architecture environment, it gives you a single tenant as if you're the only one and it's dedicated to you, which is actually the case. So if we take a look at this, just from a technical perspective, I'm going to create VPSA, Virtual Private Storage Array, #1, and I'm going to use this as a database as a service. First of all is I've allocated, and I've said that I want solid state drives to be a part of this. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to call 400 engine, and these are going to be where I'm going to go out and pick instances off of this. I'm going to pick them in pairs so that I make sure that I have redundancy. And this will give us the capability to work as, if you will, like a storage controller. They basically work as if they were a storage controller. And we can identify, well, how fast and what we need out of performance for those storage controllers. There's different versions and different performance levels available. And then I'm going to go and dedicate 4 different drives here to be able to meet what's allocated here. So here's an example that we saw before is Verizon was on a use case that we showed as one of our clients. And Verizon had a need as if you, in their environment, that they needed to be able to make sure that they could recover in the event that if a disk went down, they needed it returned to them so that they could then turn it to dust. And that had to do with basically the security that goes along with it. I don't know if you've called your phone company or worked with a phone company recently, but they need to go through a number of different security features, such as your name and your address and where you're at and all of those kinds of things to make sure that they verify you because of the security and the things that are demanded of them based on the government right now. In this type of an environment, they wanted to say that we need to be able to make sure that we can take a look at that. They had gone to AWS and they said, hey, can you do this? And they said, sure, we can be able to allocate drives to you. And they said, well, in the event that something breaks and a disk drive goes down, can you return that disk drive to me? And they're like, no, it's in a pool. I don't know where your data is at specifically. It's just out there in the pool. And they said, okay, how about that with Azure? And they said, no, we can't do that either. They came to us and we said, sure, we can absolutely do that. Because what we're doing is that we're allocating specific drives to this instance. And in the event that this drive should go down, because things break, we would then bring in and put this spare in here and recover it and take this drive and ship it back to Verizon so that they could basically turn it to dust and do what they need to do. So let's carry on with our example here. Is that in this case, the situation here is that I'm now going to say that I've got a performance NAS and I'm going to set this up and I actually need to have 8 drives. So I'm going to allocate 8 drives to it. I'm going to have it be hard drives with cache because I need to have some performance associated with it, but I don't need solid state drives. This gives me the capability to go and dedicate these 8 drives to this environment. And then also is that maybe I want to have an object archive and I'm going to dedicate 5 drives to that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use hard drives in that type of a situation because this is an archive. So I'm not worried about the performance, but I do need to be able to recover from that. So in the event, let's say that you're coming along and you say, you know what, Dean or Derek, we were in a situation here where all of a sudden, you know what, we've allocated a number of different drives here to a number of applications that are doing NAS, but maybe we don't need the performance, or maybe we need the performance that we're not expected out of those drives. Can I get solid state drives instead? Absolutely. You're paying for a service. You don't own these. This is a service that you're paying for. So what would happen is that we would ship you out solid state drives, and then you could return the hard drives back to us as far as the HDDs that are with the cache. And yet this would be based on an hourly basis as to when you need them. In the event that you had a number of solid state drives and you said, you know what, I've actually got 5 instances, so I've got 20 of them, but I've got one of my instances that has 4 drives associated with it, then I'm finding out that I don't need them to be solid state drives. Can we just take those to hard drives in a cache? I can downgrade the performance. I don't need the performance in that environment. Absolutely. So what's an important part here is that this is a service and you can't get it wrong. We can be flexible with you and we can work with you to make sure that you're getting what you need when you need it and be able to provide that to you on an OpEx service model. As we had talked about before, this can be in any number of different locations. It can be on premises in your environment. It can be over at NFINIT in a co-location environment, or it can also be into a cloud type environment, an extended one, however you want to do this. Now you also notice is that down here, let's say that you have a number of different servers that are running on AWS, for example, but you want to just use this for storage. In this type of an environment, we actually have resources that are very close to AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, and we can use Direct Connect so that you can use your CPU resources at AWS, but still be able to use Infinite Z storage in one of those locations to be able to bring that. So it's cloud adjacent and be able to utilize those hyperclouds if you choose to. And again, as we mentioned before, is that we can offer you a full stack in any of these locations of a combination of Z storage and Z compute, so that you've got a full stack that's available to you in all of the different locations. Whatever makes sense for you, whatever makes sense for your clients, whatever makes sense for your business. Let's talk about a few different use cases that go along these lines. There's 3 different use cases we want to talk about. We'll start out with the co-location of customers. Dean, do you want to discuss that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Derek. So really for us, as far as existing customers are concerned, right, in the event that you've got assets that are aging, need to be replaced and or upgraded, we can help you make that move to the OpEx cloud model without the need for the existing, for the capital expenditures. You're really a cross connect away from either Z compute or Z storage, giving you the ability to scale up for that additional project, backup or DR need that you may have, and simply pay for what you use, right? Again, without the need for the capital expenditure spending.
Excellent, thanks so much. Also, in use case number 2 that we have over here is that maybe you've got cameras and applications that are on site and you need to have Z compute and Z storage actually on site at your premises. You've got the capability of doing that we can prop that up with NFINIT and put it in your site and manage it for you. And then also be able to give you the capability to let's get this off site and do DR and backup off to an NFINIT data center. Also is it's a possibility if you've got close and latency isn't a challenge, is that maybe you've got departments or files that are running over here that are in your environment and you choose just a VPN into both Z storage and Z compute within the NFINIT environment. What we're really doing is that we're taking this data and having it, bring it in from the edge to the core and be able to take it from the core back out to the edge in a very fast way, depending on your needs and what your business is requiring out of you. What is important also is that we take a look is that we've got Z storage and Z compute resources all within NFINIT, within their data centers to be able to provide those services to you. This is a conceptual use case of what we had talked about and what Dean had brought up before, is that let's talk about XYZ terabytes. What we really want to do is that we want to show an example of stable pricing through this process. Let's pick on this a little bit. And I worked for HPE in a previous life, so I'll pick on them. Let's say that this is a 3-PAR environment that you want to be able to migrate over and you do it on premises. And now I want to be able to move this over to NFINIT. We start out and we haven't moved anything yet. We're only working with 5,000, we're using XYZ terabytes, and let's say the price per month is $5,000. These are just arbitrary numbers based on X, Y, and Z numbers. So now I can start to do that migration. I can start to move that over into an NFINIT co-location environment managed by NFINIT and be able to have, I'm doing this on a regular basis, and maybe half of this has only been moved. I've got half here still on my location and half that hasn't been moved yet in the 4 to 6 month time frame, as an example over here. Again, the price for that is still only $5,000. Once that I've moved all of this over into an NFINIT environment, the OpEx price that I'm still paying is $5,000 a month, as an example. Basically, what we're really trying to show here is that we can do this migration and move to the cloud with ease of use and also not hurting your budget. Here's the tactical version of that, of how do we hydrate this from your site to an OpEx model. And this is an example of what we just talked about. But here we've got primary storage. Again, we'll pick on 3-PAR. What I'm going to do is I'm going to migrate that data. I need to get rid of that 3-PAR. Whatever that aging technology is that's associated with it, we need to get rid of that. It's aging. The maintenance costs are becoming very expensive. We know that we want to get away from that. How do we do that? While this is still up and running, now what we're going to do is we're going to migrate this over to Z storage in your environment. We'll ship and put Z storage in your location, and it'll be right there, so it'll be very close and very easy to migrate. One application at a time, we'll migrate this data over, and then we'll be able to test it until we can take and then break this migration mirror. Once we've got that all in place, we've got Z storage here, Now, as we move to the cloud further, we can now use VPSA mirroring to move this over into an infinite environment. Now, what that gives me the capability of doing is that, again, testing one application at a time, making sure that everything works, making sure that I've got confidence in it. I'm going to move that all over. Once that's finished, we can then now take this Z storage and ship it back. Again, it's a service. You don't own it. You only pay for what you use. If we go back here and just do a quick review on a step-by-step basis, install and migrate data to a VPSA, use the VPSA as production, mirror the data from your site, one application at a time, over to Infinite, break the mirror and start production at the Infinite site, and then ship the Z storage back. This is how we migrate this data over to the cloud and make it as painless as possible and move you over to an OpEx model. Of course, when that's all done, you can then now take this 3-part and dispose of that however you want to, or whatever the old technology is. Let's talk a little bit about data protection. Veeam has, and what they refer to as their zip code, is 32110. 3 different copies of data, 2 different media types, one which is offsite, one which is immutable or air-gapped, and making sure that you test so that there's 0 errors after backup and recovery verification. Once upon a land in a time far away, I was an HPSA, and I remember walking in, and after we had disk crashes and those kinds of things, and they would basically hand me a pile of tapes and say, you know what, different technology, a different time, there's no doubt about it. But they said, you know what, we need to completely rebuild this. And I was like, have you ever done this before? And they sort of looked at me with a glazed over look in their eyes. So what we want to do is the point of this is that let's make sure so that we're not having a frantic system down, the business is down moment. Let's make sure that we do and check the errors and do the test to make sure that everything's there. University of Texas said that they did a study and they found that over 50% of the companies today, that although they're taking backups, they wouldn't be able to recover if they, after the fact that they had gone through that. So we certainly want to make sure that we do everything we can to protect you and help you protect yourself. So backup with Veeam and ransomware is, you notice we've got 32110 and we've got different color codes here. So we've got primary storage here that's going to Veeam, and then Veeam is it's putting backup copies out here on a Zadara Z storage environment. We're taking it from the primary storage in this environment to a backup storage, and now that we've done, we've got that on site. That'll be a performance tier. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to use Cloud Connect with Infinite and take this over here, for instance, to an Infinite data center to get it off-site, and also put it into a long-term retention environment, so lower performance with Z storage, and just be able to archive it, and also get it off-site to another capacity here. This also, through VCSP, gives you the capability to be able to test that, to do this, make sure that there's 0 errors with Infinite as a partner, and be able to make sure that you're good to go. So that way it gives us the capability to scale out our backup repository. Let's talk a little bit about your day-to-day experience with Infinite Managed Cloud Services and working with us and what to expect. We have a 5 nines guarantee that's in here to make sure that you've got dependable storage for your clients. What we want to do, and that means for your business and to be able to make that happen. We've got 5 nines as our SLA. The reality is that we're 5 nines and a half, and it's 100% credit based. So we're confident that this unique combination of our patented technology and the way that our people work and are watching what's going on is that we're going to be able to strive to be at 100% uptime. Of course, things break. Right now we're at 5 nines and approaching 6 nines, and we're looking forward to being able to make that happen so that way it gives you confidence in regards to what we're bringing to the table for you. Dean, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thanks, Derek. So really no more wasted spend, free up your cash flow, right? So we find many customers in the CapEx model really are over provisioned for their environment today, right? We've found that to be roughly about, companies are using really about 40% over provision for their environment, right? And they're paying for the 100% CapEx, right? They're already paying for that. So What we just, where we learn a lot of this is talking to our customers and our clients and whatnot. Recently, we did we're walking through a project timeline with a customer that was looking to do a tech refresh. So we were able to walk through their existing environment with them and not only right-size their environment, but show them the project-based flexibility of this solution, allowing them to scale up and scale down as needed. We're also able to show them how they can move from a public cloud and save on the egress charges that they were currently incurring, right? Giving them the flexibility in this process. We were able to show them the flexibility of being on-prem, in the colo, and then in cloud. Look at really providing them with that hybrid environment that they were after, right? So we were able to save them really thousands of dollars by moving them to the OpEx model, but we did it on their timeline, right? So providing them not only with a predictable financial model, but eliminating those monthly egress charges they were currently incurring. We're having these conversations every single day with our customers and prospects. So it's all about kind of moving things on your own timeline. So for example, if you've got one rack of gear that is up for a tech refresh and you've got a total of 4 racks, we can do the 1 rack now, we can do the 2nd rack at another time, and so on and so forth based on your requirements. Next slide, Derek. Okay. Yep. So again, as I mentioned, we can provide this flexibility to migrate as needed, right? We help customers with their spend, provide them with that flexibility to refresh their assets again on their timeline. You can see here prices of hard disk drives and SSDs, as mentioned above here, they're decreasing and people are looking to move from one to the other. We can help in this area as well, right? You may want to move from one to the other for price and or performance, but with Infinite, we can provide you with that flexibility. Next slide, Derek. All right. Again, I mentioned this earlier when we kicked this off a little bit about our talent and kind of what we do here, but really at Infinite, our talent is our bread and butter. Our technical, engineering, and support teams are second to none. We've got SMEs in all of our service offerings, and our customers really trust our technical team to guide them through and with their technology journey, right? One other thing to point out here, it highlights 24/7, 365. We pick up the phone when you call, right? Not only that, but we understand your environment. And we're there for you. We really take an all hands-on approach, not only with Infinite, but also by leveraging our partner in this environment with Zadara when needed.
So let's take a look and let's recap and see where we've been. Let's take a look in regards to that. Is that we started out and talked about when we were saying what the heck is going on and how do we address these things? What do we see in the marketplace? Is that now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about migrating data between clouds and data centers and co-locations. I think that we can check that box. We've discussed that. How do we model compute and storage as a service, going from a CapEx to an OpEx model? We've definitely looked at that. I need cloud services closer to the edge where the data is being generated and where the data is being consumed. It gives us the capability with Infinite to be able to take that out to the edge and be able to meet the performance needs that your business is looking for. And then how do we also use Infinite as a co-location for a DR and backup repositories? We talked about the 32110 environment. We addressed being able to do that and getting that backup off-site and making sure that it's immutable and that you can recover in the event that any ransomware or disaster recovery should happen. And then needing to keep those IT resources current at a reduced cost. How do we take sure and make sure we do that? We're basically taking that responsibility for you so that you can focus on your business, and that will help you in your coordination and with your input to make sure that we migrate to the latest and greatest technology on your timeline, not ours.
All right, so if you'd like to take advantage of what we're talking about here today, right, and see how easy it is to migrate to the cloud, connect with us before the end of September, and with one of our solution consultants here, and we will kind of walk you through what's available from a free trial standpoint. You can reach us at sales@infinite.com, the phone number on the screen, or just go to infinite.com. Or we got a couple of events coming up, right? So you can visit us live and in person on September 8th at the Arizona Technology Summit. It will be held at the Scottsdale Resort at McCormick Ranch. We'll be there both with Zadara in booth 302. Stop by, say hello, learn a little bit more about Infinite and Zadara and what we're doing together. Also on September 28th, we've got our NFINIT Security Symposium here in San Diego at the La Jolla Marriott. So again, sponsored by Zadara. It's a half-day event up there that is really geared towards a lot of fun and fun, interesting, and educational topics and modules for the afternoon that I think everybody will get a good learning experience out of.
So let's talk about this again. Just as a quick overview of where we started and where we were going is that we'll wrap this up with basically we're looking at risk-free migration plan to the cloud. Start where you want, pay as you go, and you can't get it wrong. On behalf of Dean and I, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We'll give you a little bit of time back. Really appreciate you joining us and look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.